welcome back to my channel. I want to talk to you today about my 10 best books of 2025. Yes, so let's get into it. Okay, so what do I want to say about my books for 2025? I think I read about 40 books. I keep track of them as best as I can, and I think I stopped tracking in Goodreads accidentally around the 36 book mark, and that happens to me all the time. I am really bad at tracking what I'm reading, when I start, all that kind of stuff. I am just kind of, when I'm reading, into its vibes. But all of that said, I want to tell you about the 10 books that I loved, and yeah, let's just get into it. So the first book that I read and loved this year was 1984. That one was 1980. You know what 1984 is about? It's about a guy who is kind of like accidentally, on purpose maybe, going against the grain. He is dissatisfied with the state of his life and how life is set up in the place where he lives, which, don't knock me, I forget the name, but it's Winston. He doesn't like the place. It's a thing. He does like a girl. Her name is Julia. It takes him a minute, but he likes her. And he lives in a society that is incredibly good at like tamping and quieting people down. They all tell on each other. Their kids tell on the parents. Like, it's a whole thing. The government system in place has changed the way that language works and exists and is used, and in some cases has even gotten rid of language. It's a whole thing. And that is, yeah, that's the kind of like the middle of it. And it's incredibly dystopian, but a lot of what is talked about in 1984 is a reality, and some of us just need that wake-up call. And so go read it. There's a great audio version as well that Andrew Garfield and Cynthia Erivo narrate. So if you're not into picking up a physical book, maybe try that. But you definitely need to read, in my opinion, you need to read 1984. It's like required reading. Along the same lines, I read The Handmaid's Tale. And it's funny because I picked this one up at, I don't know, like 5 or so years ago, like when everybody else kind of was. And I instead of reading it, I watched the show, because reading it was just a bit too close to home, like at the moment, and I couldn't do it. I decided to kind of just like white knuckle through it this year, and I'm glad I did, because it was incredibly rewarding. Again, really, really dystopian, and really like, you know, like hard to read in some ways, because when you can see so many parallels in society, it's just like you can't not see it. But it is beautifully written, very, very beautifully written, which is always going to be a must for me. And reading The Handmaid's Tale in a lot of ways for me felt like reading Toni Morrison. Like, it is an act of love for myself and allowing myself to sit in the things that are uncomfortable. And it's something that I should do. But also, like, I really genuinely enjoyed the experience because it was so well written. The story was so well told. So if you are into The Handmaid's Tale, then or if you're not into The Handmaid's Tale, I would suggest you try. And I would say that the show does a really good job of like bringing it to life, you know, visually. I feel like the show is incredibly well written as well, well written as well, and so you can enter it from either vantage point and still consume the other form of media like very easily, because I did that. I went down a bit of a cultish rabbit hole, and that began with Cultish by Amanda Montell. And basically this is a book about the science behind what makes something a cult, or what makes something cult-like, and kind of the behaviors to look out for. There are like guides for like, if this is happening, then it might be that, like, it's that kind of thing. But there are also stories, like accounts of people who have experienced, if not what we would call a cult like a high control group, which is like a better way to talk about these things, because cult is kind of a term that's like used a bit too often to like adequately speak to like what's going on. What's going on is there are tendencies, and this book does a really good job at speaking to those tendencies, and I feel like it gave me a whole new understanding of language around what are these high control groups, how do you recognize the things that those groups generally do, how do you recognize where it all begins, and then where do you go from here? And that was like really helpful. She also does give you a little bit of like a positive way to look at things, in that having like the fact that this is a conversation is already a step in the right direction. People are starting to ask the right questions, and so that's really important. The other book I read The Power of Us, which is kind of like the more science heavy version of cultish. It talks about what like it's like an anthropological study of groupthink in a way. And the really interesting thing about it is the writers of this book, they're professors at 2 different colleges right now, but when they were, I believe at 2 different colleges, but when they were writing this, they were having their own personal experiences about what happens when kind of groupthink takes over, or mob mentality, because they kind of are the same thing. And essentially there's this idea that the first person to the scene, whatever the scene is, sets the tone for the rest. And so if you arrive upon a scene where somebody is experiencing something that's making them disgruntled, and even if there is something you can do about it, like safely, you're going to assume that there's a reason the person who arrived before you isn't doing that thing. And so like it sets everybody like next up, it sets everybody who's next up in like that state of freeze. It pushes forth that sort of like groupthink mob mentality where everybody kind of behaves in the same way and kind of just assumes that the other person knows best. And one of the authors of this book experienced that firsthand while writing this book, which was really interesting to me, and had to find a way to like snap the audience, the people around him, out of that like state and explain to them, hey, this is what I need help with or support with to make this situation better in this moment and safer for this, for this woman, and this is why. And it's just interesting that he had to convince some people to do the right thing. But I will say that reading this book was great for me because it allowed me to understand that it's far more normal for people to do what they can to fit in, and far less normal to rock the boat. And I think I needed that perspective and that vantage point as I was consuming all of this literature about high control groups, and as I was experiencing the aftermath of being adjacent to high control groups. I needed that perspective to help soften me to what was going on, and to help remind me or make me aware that what I was experiencing was more or less normal behavior, very normal. And that was really helpful. I also learned in reading these books that people who end up in these groups, people have this idea that the people in these groups are like unintelligent or, like emotionally like super vulnerable and this, that, and the other. And I never really thought that, because I know a lot of people who have been in like a group like this before, but I was able to like solidify in my brain how easy it is for hyper achievers like to fall into this, because usually when you join a group, it's because you want to better yourself. It's because you're looking to engage with something or some, idea on a higher level. You want to better yourself. And so consuming all the media that I have about these groups and listening to podcasts and listening to all of the memoirs I listen to has really helped me better educate myself on just so many things. And I'll talk about a couple of other books that I read within that category at the very end. They're not a part of my like best 10, but they were really good. Anyway, so I also read Bury Your Bones in the Midnight Soil. This one was polarizing for some people. I don't necessarily know why. I think that some people felt that the narrative went on for a little bit too long and for certain characters, or not long enough. I'm in the camp of not long enough. I think her name is Alice. I want to say her name is Alice, but her story needed more and more time to develop, because it was just interesting what happened between her and Lottie at the end. I was just like, I thought this was the best relationship. I don't know. But I really enjoyed Sabine. Maria turned Sabine. I really enjoyed her perspective a lot. I really enjoyed Lottie a lot. I thought she was awesome. And if you like vampires and you like a complicated story, I wouldn't call it like a love story. I mean, it's sapphic, so there's vibes, but it's definitely not a love story in my opinion, or maybe it's a love story for yourself. But I really enjoyed it. It was my first V. Schwab. It was really good. Definitely will pick it up again because the lines are so beautiful. Like, I didn't know V. Schwab wrote like this, and so I'm excited to continue picking these up, or picking up more V. Schwab. Okay. Another one that I'm gonna say was pretty polarizing for some people was Great Big Beautiful Life, which I really enjoyed. I thought that, so I never remember what Emily Henry's writing about specifically. The stories sort of bleed together for me, but I always enjoy them while I'm reading them, and I always think fondly of the experience of reading a book. Like, I remember what I was doing, or like if I was listening to the audio version, I remember like kind of where I was walking, like that kind of stuff. And I find these really good I find these really easy to settle into, I'll say. And this one was very distinct for me. Like, I still remember, I don't remember names, but I still remember everything that happened. Actually, I do remember names. Hayden, I didn't like him at first, but generally when I'm reading some sort of love story, a romance, there's always, like, I initially hate one of the POVs because they're just doing too much, and you need the other POV to balance them out and make how they're behaving, how POV 1 is behaving, make sense. And that's what happened with me and Hayden. Like, I was okay with Alice. I thought she was cool, but had no depth. But then Hayden had all the depth and was angry. And so I just needed them to balance each other out. And Alice really developed as the story went on. And so I don't knock her for lacking depth at the beginning, because she had so much depth as the story went on, and you kind of understood why she comes across the way that she does, given like how she grew up and how she felt like as a younger person. And then with Hayden, you understand why he's so intense and annoying as well. And so I really liked both of them. And I think the best part of this book was that there was this underlying story happening with the famous person who they were trying to figure out which one would get to write about. And the way that it, like, even that story was so well fleshed out. And so I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I think it's my favorite Emily Henry that I've ever read. So I hope it's a movie very soon. That would be great. I also read, and this was a highly anticipated release for me, The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. This story this book was, well, I really liked it. There's a boy in here, and his name is Hyde, and he is going through a lot of things. He's struggling with addiction, maybe the end of an addiction. This is like during the opioid epidemic in Hartford, Connecticut, and the woman, he goes to help take care of a woman somehow, and her name is Grazina, and she is we learn going through some like experiencing mental decline, and they are so perfectly there for each other. When somebody needs to tell a story, the other person jumps on the bandwagon. they fit together so well, and they're so different culturally, in terms of their age, in terms of their vantage points for like how they see and experience the world, but then in the ways that matter, they fit together, they inform each other, and that was really, really just powerful to read, and especially right now. And also Ocean Vuong is a poet first, and like he's a poet novelist, and so everything that he writes is just beautiful and stunning and spectacular. Neither of them spoke for a long time during the ride back. It was the vast emptiness one feels after any gathering, where the muscles still throbbed with people's voices, energies both expelled and unspent, and the cab became a kind of cradle, lulling them to stillness. I just think that I think that he so easily describes relatable experiences within a story that maybe is super specific to, you know, the character. It's not at all relatable to me. The story is not at all relatable to me, but the way that moments are described are so relatable, and only a great writer can do that. And I just love how Ocean Vuong brings people together without trying to, you know. And so that was definitely a good one for me. And I also read Before I Let Go, and this was a good time. Before I Let Go is Kennedy Ryan's first book in the Skyland series. I think it's called This Could Be Us. Yeah, I got it for Christmas, and I'm gonna read that soon. I'm excited to finish the entire trilogy because I really enjoyed this. It's well written. It's a complicated love story. It's a second chance romance, and I felt very seen, like more like unexpectedly seen in this book, because it's about parents. It's about parents who are falling in love and dealing with their kids and dealing with the emotions of the kids as they navigate their own romantic situation. And there is just something really, really rich and vivid about seeing real life on the page, and I think that it gives me a new understanding of how important representation is. And this isn't, it's interesting because like I'm in like a weird position. Like I'm a young mom of kids who aren't like, they're not babies, you know? Like I'm 32, my oldest is 8. And so I've never been like properly, or I've never felt like incredibly properly represented in good literature. But for like people who are still young and full of life and also happen to have children and are falling in love and dating and, you know, dealing with regular interactions with the father of their children while all of this stuff happens, like this was just great and really, really good for me. It was really good for me, and I'm so glad that I gave myself the space and time to kind of have more fun with my books this year, because I think I needed that. I think I needed to just like see what happens and not tie myself so completely to kind of crazy arbitrary goals, and just allow myself to sit in literature and enjoy it. And as a result, I have gained something from it. So this one was really, really special for me. Okay, I think I'm almost done. I got 2 left. So the other book that I really, really, really enjoyed this year was Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. And I really enjoyed this one because it deals with like a multi-generational, I like multi-generational stories. And so you have the main girl, the main character, her name is Melody, and you have her mother. and they're living in, I think it's Brooklyn, and it's just like you're getting a picture of, it's a coming of age story for multiple generations, and seeing that I think was really, really great. I love multi-generational stories. I'm interested in that kind of storytelling. I'm interested in like female-led stories as well, and this gave me all of that. And it was one of the first books I read at the top of the year, and it set me up for a really interesting year of reading. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I definitely recommend it. I got it from the library, and I'm so glad that when I was, guys, talk to your librarians, because they are great at recommending books if they know even just a little bit about your taste. And so definitely talk to your librarians. And then the final book that I'll talk about was probably my best book of the year, and that was All About Love by Bell Hooks. And how do we talk about All About Love? This book I thought was going to be something that described, you know, like gently described love and what it looks like and maybe what it feels like and like things like that. Like I thought it was going to be like that kind of thing, like romantic, familial, but like more of a positive lens on that. And instead it talked about the act of love and the trauma in how we love, like how trauma informs how we love. And it talked about how like you can't, like you have to like take a part in love. You can't just like, it's not a thing you say, it's like a thing you do. It's an act, and it's the only act that can ultimately heal us as a people. And yeah, it was very, if you read it, go gently. Actually, when I first read it, I was like, I don't know how I feel about, like I picked up and put it down several times, and by the end I didn't know how I felt about it. I was like, did I like this? I think that I struggled with it and like wrestled with it because it was a hard book, but an important book, a necessary book, all of that. And so that is my book. That's my best book. So those are my top 10, and I am really, really excited about everything that I read. I'm excited that I read a bit more than I thought I would read this year, and I am excited that I gave myself kind of like a little bit of a break in a lot of ways. And this year I'm going to do things just a little bit differently. Still kind of focusing on not giving myself random goals that are just meant to get me to read a particular number of books, and instead I'm going to focus on reading books that are going to entertain me, yes, but also I'm going to read books that are going to educate me, and I'm going to read books that are going to like heal me and like make me a better person. I think I want to be a bit more intentional, but not intentional in terms of quantity, intentional in terms of quality. And that's going to take the form of every single genre that I read. I want to be reading for quality, and I think I did a good job getting started. And yeah, we'll talk about that in probably the next video. I'm going to talk to you about how I'm going to be reading this year, and then I'm going to talk to you about how I'm going to kind of revamp how I do my TBRs, and like what, if any, structure I'm pulling into it. I also want to say that I'm doing Jenny's from This Story Ain't Over. I'm doing her anti-brainrot reading challenge, and so that's going to be a pretty big part of the framework for how I read this year, because a lot of the things that she's talking about and that she's disgruntled with are things that I relate to, and things that I'm also kind of struggling with, and things that are making it hard for me to figure out how to goal set when I'm reading. And so it's still going to be fun. I'm still going to have that be like the biggest part of what I'm doing. It's just I'm also going to align the fun to some of my goals that I'm, some of my interests. And I think that that'll be a good way to do it. And that'll allow me to more easily shift gears into broadening this space for everything that I'm interested in, and you know, still doing my weekly book videos because books are a big part of what I'm interested in, probably the biggest, and then also allowing for me to share other little things with you that I've been talking about, like the kinds of food I enjoy eating and the path I'm on during like what could be a really drastic career change for me, and you know, like mental health a little bit, maybe like my take, and kind of like how I'm being guided, and just just like a bit more lifestyle content in addition to my books. And so next week I'll give you guys my end of the year, like everything I read last year, I think, next week, and I'll also give you my, you know, here's what I'm doing this year. Maybe I'll do 2 videos next week. I think that's it. So thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you. Our channel is having a little bit of growth, which is so nice, and I am so excited to see that. We just celebrated 100 subscribers together, and we're already closing in on 110, which like isn't maybe a lot to a lot of people, but like for us who've just been here for like 6 months is great. So yeah, I'm excited to be here with you guys. I'm excited to continue growing with you, and I would love to hear what you got up to this year. Comment your best books in the comments, and let me know if you're taking part in Jenini's challenge from the Story Ain't Over, or if you're doing anything to shift the way you read this year, or if you're just vibing, because that's also great. Just let me know. And I think that's it. I'll see you in the next one.